Hi, I'm Kyle Buller.
And I'm Joe Moore. For years, we've been obsessed with psychedelics and holotropic states of consciousness.
Together, we have interviewed hundreds of world-leading experts, trained thousands of students, and conducted a lot of personal research.
Join us as we explore the past, present, and future of psychedelics and discover how the current psychedelic renaissance is poised to change the world as we know it.
This is Psychedelics Tonight. In our last episode, we learned about the brave new world of novel psychedelic compounds, drugs that have been recently created or discovered, and are now being explored further for their healing potential.
Or for recreational enjoyment.
We explored MEAI, a novel compound being researched for alcohol use disorder, and we honored the late, great psychedelic explorer Sasha Shulgin, an inspiration for many modern-day novel researchers and enthusiasts alike. Tonight, we're looking at how novel compounds are being worked with today, and how they may impact the psychedelic world of tomorrow.
In recent years, novel psychedelics have been generating tons of positive headlines. From a research perspective, they're creating a new hope for people afflicted with mental and neurological health conditions. And remember that sweet, sweet legal status for lesser-known novel compounds? It can be crucial for drug companies to have one less regulatory hurdle to jump on their path to commercialization.
While existing laws for the scheduled psychedelics like psilocybin and LSD need to be altered for them to be consumed legally and in a medical context, unscheduled novel compounds nearly need to make it through the clinical trial process and receive clearance from the FDA to become sanctioned medicines.
Choosing to work in psychedelics in any professional capacity, not just science, is in and of itself a radical act. But it seems that those who follow the novel path are an especially rebellious breed, venturing into that which is fully unknown.
Where modern-day pioneering of novel compounds is concerned, there is perhaps no researcher cutting a wider swath than Israeli researcher Dr. Z. Born Ezekiel Golan, Dr. Z calls himself a Shulginist, one who believes in or practices the principles laid down by Shulgin. His work mainly focuses on tweaking known compounds just enough to produce similar effects of their predecessors, while altering the chemical structure just enough so it's essentially legal. While European governments cracked down on legal highs, like Dr. Z's in 2016, he told The Guardian, quote, "My drive comes from the will to create something new, better, safe, and legal." The underlying belief of this activity is cognitive liberty. People should be allowed to alter their own state of consciousness and self-medicate as long as it does not harm others or themselves.
It's that newness, the idea of building a better mousetrap, that makes novel psychedelics such an exciting prospect for future medicine.
Of the hundreds of compounds that Dr. Z created, some have been controversial, like mephedrone, but many others were discovered to have beneficial properties. In this episode, we'll focus on one such substance, MEAI, which has since had its IP acquired by Clearmind Medicine to further research its therapeutic potential.
MEAI is reported to have notable advantages over a legal, popular, and socially accepted drug that's ironically been called out time and time again as the most dangerous substance of all, alcohol.
To better understand how MEAI might become an alternative for alcohol and join the ranks of those name brand compounds, we're going to talk to Mark Hayden. Mark Hayden, welcome to Psychedelics Tonight. Really excited to have you here. Can you give a little bit of an intro and background about some of your work and who you are?
Sure. My original career is I worked as an addictions service supervisor. I ran a team of counselors, physician, and a nurse in the world of Vancouver coastal health. And I tried to engage my organization in a discussion around talking about psychedelics, and I failed. So I retired from Vancouver Coastal Health and started MAPS Canada, which was the Canadian equivalent of MAPS, and our goal was to fund research and to engage the public about the benefits and the medicalization of psychedelics. And now I've joined Clearmind, and we're kind of focusing on one molecule, which is called MEAI.
Mark, we've heard a little bit about MEAI and the effects, how it's similar but different than alcohol. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about how does does it feel, and what are some of the effects of it?
So let me describe the experience of taking MEAI. If you take one dose, the experience is like one drink of alcohol, one beer. So it's mild and relaxing and somewhat positive. If you take a second one, it feels like two beers. At that point, actually that's the most I ever drink, so at that point, very relaxed and engaged and sociable and positive. If you take a third one, it feels like a low dose of MDMA. It feels like about 30 milligrams. So at that point, you're really feeling connected to other people around you and happy and safe and disinhibited, and it's not a massive experience. It's a mild experience, but it's a mild and positive experience. If you take a fourth dose, the abrupt change is actually quite dramatic. And the best way that I've ever described it is, imagine that you've just finished eating 2 pieces of really goopy cheesecake, and somebody puts a third piece of cheesecake in front of you and hands you a fork. You just look at the cheesecake and you go, yuck! And so just imagine yourself in that moment. Imagine yourself looking at that third piece of cheesecake and ask yourself, why can't you touch the cheesecake? It's not because you're so stimulated you're hanging off the ceiling. It's not because you're so sedated you're lying on the floor. It's not because you're kneeling in front of the toilet. It's because you're satiated. You're just simply done with cheesecake. So MEI, from a neuroscience point of view, is actually kind of fascinating, because what it's shown me is we have this thing in our brain that's a satiation response, and you can trigger the satiation response. And that's exactly what MEAI does. So the idea of continuing with a behavior is just completely unfathomable after you've consumed enough of it.
Mark, what is it about MEAI that differentiates it from other existing treatments for alcohol use disorder? Is there something special about it in particular?
MEAI is, curious enough, attractive. It works as an experience that's positive. It's not extremely attractive. You don't love it. So, if it was extremely attractive, then you would have a problem with MEI. It's attractive enough that you like it, but it produces this kind of bizarre satiation response. Now, actually compare it for a second to other addiction treatments. There's a range of medicines that can be given. Compressate and naltrexone will take away the pleasure of alcohol. Disulfiram is antabuse. It'll make you vomit and horribly ill when combined with alcohol. So there's nothing like MEI. There's nothing that is attractive in its own right that is a medicine that simply makes you stop drinking. So it's completely unique. There's actually nothing else like it.
So, Mark, what's the biggest difference between MEAI and existing psychedelic treatments?
We're actually calling MEAI a non-hallucinogenic psychedelic, and we actually worked really hard to come up with that description of it. The challenge of traditional psychedelic treatments, psilocybin assisted therapy, for example, is going to be the cost. So MEI is not associated with therapy. It's something you simply will be able to purchase after getting a prescription from your physician, and you take it as needed. So there's no cost barriers to accessing MEI in the how we are envisioning this will become available.
Mark, what are some of the upcoming milestones around MEAI, and when might we get to see it in market?
So in order to turn a molecule into a medicine, step one is you have to prove that it's safe in rodents, and then larger animals, and then you have to prove that it's safe in humans, and then you have to prove that it's efficacious, which basically means it works. Does it actually work for what you say it's doing? And then you have to prove that that is true in a large enough population to say it's generalizable to everybody on the planet.
So just generally speaking, clinical pathways can take anywhere from 3 to 10 years, right?
So right now, Clearmind Medicine is proving that it's safe in animals. It's called preclinical toxicology. MEI actually works with rats in terms of rats stop drinking when you give them MEI, which I had no idea that would work in rats, because I didn't know how similar rats' brains were to human brains. So it seems to work in rats, and so the next step will be safety in humans, and then does this actually work in humans? How long that's going to take is anybody's guess.
Mark, could you tell us a little bit about the discovery process for novel molecules? It's really exciting, and we'd like to learn more about how this technology might play out.
Now, there's a thing called the QSAR paradox, which is the qualitative structural relationship paradox, which basically means you cannot predict by looking at a molecule what the effect on the human brain will be. You can guess, but you don't know. LSD is a good example. LSD and psilocybin are not that different, but one is 1,000 times stronger than the other. That was not predictable by looking at the structure of the molecule. So what chemists do is they make often relatively small changes in a molecule, and quite frankly, you can't give it to an animal because a rabbit or a rat is not going to tell you what the experience is. It has to be taken by a human being. Often it's the chemist who invented it. And so they'll come up with this idea, they'll get the thing made by themselves or somebody else, and then they'll test it. And then it gets released into the underground market, and people start to notice stuff about how it works. And in the case of MEI, it was noticed that it had this kind of bizarre anti-addictive quality. But, it often evolves in terms of its use. It either becomes popular or it doesn't. If it becomes popular, then it becomes criminalized, and then they go back to the lab and create something else.
So Mark, this is really interesting as it relates to novel compounds and how we might be able to improve the human condition here. I'm kind of curious your perspective on novel compounds generally as it relates to, furthering improving the human condition, decreasing suffering and whatnot.
I think chemists will just keep creating new molecules, and people will keep noticing what they're useful for or not useful for. And I don't predict that this is going to end. I think there will be endless explorations of the human mind based on how they relate to different compounds. I mean, I would not have intuitively understood that the human brain has the ability to simply produce the satiation response, and a chemical can stimulate that experience. I didn't know that. I always thought satiation was like you've had too much. Too much pizza, oh my God, I feel satiated. I thought it was associated with pizza. It seems to be associated with some brain chemical change in the human brain that you can stimulate and produce a response. I don't know if anybody knew that. I don't know if any neuroscientist has ever understood the satiation pathway. And that's what this new compound has taught us. So I think endlessly new compounds will teach us things about the human brain that, quite frankly, we simply don't know right now. And the more we can tune our brains, hopefully, the healthier and happier and better lives that we'll live.
Mark Hayden, really amazing having you here today. Really appreciate finding out what's going on at Clearmind with MEAI. Can't wait to find out more.
Let's stay in touch.
To borrow from Terence McKenna's novelty theory, psychedelic science is indeed using its achieved level of complexity as a platform for greater complexity today. As competition and commercialization heats up, new and novel compounds are the subject of renewed interest from the pharmaceutical industry.
The subject of intellectual property, or IP, is a heated debate in the psychedelic community. If you follow the space, you may have seen some of the controversial headlines around IP strategies for companies looking to patent classic psychedelics like MDMA, psilocybin, and LSD. Critics have challenged this strategy, claiming the company's patent lacks novelty required for patentability.
More defensible is the case for patenting truly novel compounds. It's a strategy used by drug companies to solidify their position in the marketplace. Owning a new and original psychedelic that no other company can research or commercialize is rather appealing for investors.
Because of that appeal, there's exciting work with novel psychedelics happening all around the world. A couple of examples. UK researchers are exploring MDMA derivatives that could result in a drug with a shorter half-life and a more rapid onset. And a Canadian research team is developing second-generation LSD compounds that target cluster headaches. Clearmind CEO, Dr. Adi Zulaf-Shani, is joining us in this fascinating discussion. Let's take a look. Dr. Adi Zulaf-Shani, welcome to Psychedelics Tonight. Really excited to have you here. I wonder if you could give a little bit of an introduction of who you are and your role at Clearmind.
I'm a biomedical research and development executive with a vast experience with over 20 years of strategic and operational leadership in the healthcare industry. I have a deep understanding of therapeutics development in heavily regulated environments, and to date I brought 2 products all the way from the bench to the market. And my background is that I hold PhD in human biology and immunology, and I'm the CEO of Clearmind Medicine.
Could you tell us briefly what Clearmind Medicine does?
Clearmind is an innovative pharmaceutical company developing drugs to solve widespread yet underserved health problems. With that said, our first focus is alcohol use disorder, which is very common and costly illness. But with the strong management team we have and the portfolio of protected patents, we are set to achieve our goals, with one of them being to better the lives of millions.
So we've been focusing on novel compounds, and we understand that's one of the focuses at Clearmind's clinical work. Can you tell us why Clearmind is deciding to focus on novel compounds?
There's an opportunity for biotech companies and pharma to be the one to solve mental health conditions, which is a huge public health crisis, and there's a gap between the mental health need and the mental health resources and treatments. Having said that, we believe that innovative psychedelics could lead to better outcomes, both in effectiveness and most importantly in safety, since they are being synthesized to better connect to the target receptors in lower concentrations while maintaining obviously their potency. So this, what we call the second generation compound, ticks all wish list, if you will, of how you want this psychedelics or treatment to look like.
Thank you for that, really helpful. Can you tell us a little bit about alcohol use disorder and the current toll on society?
I think the most striking data that I can share with the audience is that is in regard to mortality. Alcohol consumption contributes to 3 million deaths each year globally. Only in the US, alcohol is the 3rd most common preventable cause of death, and more than 5% of adults struggle with alcohol use disorders. The cost is more than $400 billion yearly. This is more than the US spend for heart diseases, depression, diabetes, smoking, obesity. So I'm sure you can all agree with me that alcoholism is a huge problem, and this is why we at Clearmind Medicine decided to pursue alcohol use disorder as the first indication, and this is why we are developing our proprietary MEI to address this problem.
What kind of advantages does MEAI have over alcohol when it comes to compulsion and repeated use?
So MEI, or in its chemical name 5-methoxy-2-aminoinodane, is I would say atypical psychedelics. It exerts a euphoric alcohol-like experience. We believe that MEI breaks the vicious binge drinking cycle at a decision point to drink more alcohol by inverting neural pathways such as 5-HT1A. Literature, by the way, shows that 5-HT1A receptors are associated with controlling craving behaviors across the board. So we believe that MEI might be useful for other addictions like eating and also depression. It will be a prescribed treatment, but it will not require to be taken under a psychotherapy, unlike the other psychoactive or psychedelic treatments that are being developed, which will make it more accessible and more affordable for everyone.
Dr. Adi Zulaf-Shani, thank you for joining us here at Psychedelics Tonight. Really appreciated all your insights and learning more about Clearmind and MEI and the future for its clinical application. So thank you again.
Sure, it was a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
We want to thank our guests for sharing their knowledge and experience of this new world of novel psychedelics.
We would also like to give a special shout out to all the novel compounds being discovered daily. It's truly remarkable how far we've come in the last few decades.
From past and present pioneers like Sasha Shulgin and Dr. Z, to the backyard chemists of tomorrow, we're very excited to see what the future holds. Until next time, this has been Psychedelics Tonight, and thanks for joining us.
Stay smart, stay weird, safe tripping.